we'll get to see him again.
It's a good call. He can take the EPW Coastal title across the multiverse. There's Nitro now. Ooh, went for a shoulder block, but O'Day had him scouted. Gonna drag him through the ropes
What's he
now.
doing here?
Got him elevated.
Oh my goodness!
DDT. That'll be enough.
That might be it. Oh no.
Spooky-loo with another WrestleRoni. We're going back down under. That's where we're staying anymore, I guess. We're just staying in Australia because, hey, I be loving some Australian wrestling. Let's learn about some QWA, some Queensland Wrestling Alliance. Did I get that right?
Yep, you got it right. You smashed it.
Hell yeah. Trent O'Day, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing, Trent?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm excited, man. I'm glad to have you on here. A little bit of a different face from the Aussie wrestling scene, so I'm glad to have you.
Oh, thanks, man. I really, really appreciate that. I've seen you've done a little bit of Aussie wrestling. Got the famous Birdman on a couple of times.
That's our boy, man. He's heading up to war, heading to AWE, he's heading everywhere.
Yeah, man. He's going everywhere.
Good for him. We're super happy for him. But it's about you today. We're going to put you over like $1 million. We're going to let the wrestling fans know all about Trent O'Day. What's going on with you recently? What's going on with QWA?
Oh, man. It's actually a decent question. QWA has been going through... so we started years and years and years back as QCW, and then we changed over to QWA in 2018, I think, 2014, 2018. I can't remember. I wrote an article about this a while ago, but I wasn't there. This was way before me. And then we floundered around for a little bit, and then after about, I want to say like just before COVID, so like maybe 2018. It would have been 2018, I think, which was like the year I came in. So like I started training in 2017, so then I started in 2018. Okay. We went through like a massive transitional change, and like I don't know if you know like Queensland and how big Australia is, but like Townsville is like super isolated. So like where the QWA is based, Townsville's really, really isolated. So there's like not a whole lot down that eastern coast except for like Townsville, and then there's like a couple of towns, and then there's like Brisbane, which is like where all the Queensland wrestling is like centralized, right? Mm-hmm. So there's like no appetite, or was no appetite for professional wrestling in like Townsville. So we were like fighting against the current from the start. Mm-hmm. And then I'd say in 2018, like we started to build a little bit of traction. We grabbed like maybe a couple of hundred like decently committed fans. And then we just started to sort of roll on and build on that. And then recently the QWA has gone through like another owner change. So, like the biggest thing at the moment is trying to like keep a hold of owners, because we've had like a couple of owners that have come and gone. They've all been great. Like they've all had their own ideas and their own way that they wanted to do stuff, and their own way that they wanted to push the company forward. But I guess at the moment, like the biggest thing has just been trying to like keep one on board. So we've gone through like yet another owner transition change. But the owners that we have now are super committed, super keen. And that's not to say the other ones weren't, but these guys are just super involved, super keen. And so I'd say probably since March, we had like a 3-month hiatus from like December, January, February. So like March, we came back. And ever since March, like we've just been really focusing on pushing like a really good live product, which has been awesome. We've put effort into training a bunch of new guys, trying to beef the roster up a little bit, because we do have a long list of fly-ins from Brisbane, which it's a 2.5-hour flight. So it's still like, to get from Brisbane to Townsville, it's still like $300 or $400 for a return flight for one wrestler to come up and back. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of those wrestlers, because we're a small indie company, a lot of those guys are paying for that off their own back.
Wow.
As well. So like it was really important that we beefed up the roster and got our own guys. So now we've got a roster of, I'd say, probably like 7 or 8, or maybe 10, like 7 to 10, like homegrown, local guys,
Mm-hmm.
guys and girls, and then a couple of fly-ins here and there. But like, yeah, man, QWA's gone through massive. I said all of that to basically say that QWA's gone through a very big transitional change of late. But it seems to be going really well. Everyone's having a great time. The vibes are really high. And I guess as long as the promotion feels good behind the curtain, it doesn't really matter.
Hell yeah, good way to put it. And props to those guys flying themselves out on their own dime, man. Like, I'm not dissing
Yeah.
anybody. I mean, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But I know a lot of guys, if they're not breaking even, they're not doing it. And I get that because I'm a broke dude myself. So props to those guys, and props on building your own homegrown talent. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's hard, man. Like the world of pro wrestling is still super weird to me, right? Like I've been wrestling for like 6 years, which is like almost nothing, like in terms of like major careers, right?
You're a veteran in
Um,
West Virginia.
but like to me, like the world of pro wrestling is like still super weird to me, especially like when I hear stories from like overseas and like what is counted as like what should be professional wrestling, right? So like I hear a lot of stories about like, oh, you should be flying yourself, like people should be flying you everywhere, and like wrestling should be like business, and you should, make sure that you're not spending too much money and like all this sort of stuff. Whereas I'm like, man, if we don't spend money over here to get started, you're not wrestling anywhere.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like as a new kid, or as even as like a relatively experienced guy, like there's what like there's a couple of companies in Brisbane. So I'd say there's maybe like 4 or 5 companies in Brisbane, and like one up where we are, and then there's one in Rockhampton, which is War, where Birdman's going, like
Hell yeah.
WAR.
Mm-hmm.
They're in Rockhampton, but they're 8 hours south, like 8 hour drive south of where I am.
Oh wow.
And then
Okay.
Brisbane is like another 8 hours or something south of them. So you imagine, like, if you're not paying for flights, if you're not paying for your own way to go places, whether it's to train or whether it's to wrestle or whether it's to, whatever else, if you're not paying, you're not going. Simple
Yeah.
as that, because no one, like, no small indie fed in Australia is paying $400 to fly, some relative unknown to and from to their company. Like if you're going on your own dime, and that's $400 a pop every time.
Wow, that's really relevant information, man. That's an eye opener. That's crazy. I mean, God bless y'all that does it. There's a show. I think it's a 4-hour drive tomorrow. I chose the 2-hour drive over the 4-hour drive. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, 100%. Of course, you choose the 2 hour drive. 4 hours is a long drive.
Yeah, and the 4 hours my home promotion, but sorry. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to the other show.
Well, I'll tell you, I did. So I used to wrestle like War regularly. So like
Okay.
WAR back when they were QWAR. So before they changed, they used to be Q War, and now they're just War.
Oh, okay.
I used to wrestle them all the time. So like my two like regular promotions were the QWA in Townsville, and then I would wrestle the Q War QWAR in Rockhampton. And not to say I still don't want to wrestle with those guys. Like I had to take some time off traveling and things like that because of literally what you just said. So to leave Townsville to go down to there and wrestle and then come back, obviously you'd have to do it on a weekend, right?
Right.
So I'm lucky enough with my 9 to 5 that on a Friday I clock off at 2:30. Yeah. So I finish work at 2:30. I get home. I have all my stuff. The boys used to come and pick me up, so we used to like all road trip down as a crew, and we leave Townsville at like 3:30. Right? It's an 8-hour drive from Townsville to Rockhampton, where Q War is. So I'd go 4 hours south, and then we'd sleep the night in a place called Mackay, which was my hometown, like where my parents were.
Oh, okay.
So I'd stay there, and then in the morning we'd wake up. We'd travel the other 3.5 hours, 4 hours to get to Rockhampton. We'd get there by like 10 or 11. The show setup would happen. We'd set the show up. We'd set the ring up. We'd get our merch ready. We'd do all the match planning. We'd go over the show meeting, yada, yada, yada. we'd have the show. The show wouldn't finish till like maybe 9:30, 10, and then by the time you like pack up and say your goodbyes and have a beer after the show, you're looking at like maybe 11:30, right?
Right.
So then after you finish that, you go back to the place we were staying, and because I didn't want to get home like to my partner or anything like that, I didn't want to wait until like 7 p.m. on a Sunday. So we'd go to bed at like 12:31 in the morning. I'd get up at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And then me and my tag partner would drive the 8 hours all the way back to Townsville in one whack.
Wow.
And we'd still get back at like 3 in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon or whatever it was, just so we could get ready for work on Monday. You know what I mean? Like that's the experience of having to travel down to Rockhampton and back. So when you say I choose the 2 hour over the 4 hour, 100%. I choose the 4 hour over the 8 hour any day.
Props to you, man. What was the feedback like from the friends and family? We all have them. The friends and family that don't understand wrestling, that, it's not their love. They don't get it. So what do you got to hear? What's the feedback from them when you're making these trips, spending this money to go to these places?
It's interesting because my family are usually pretty supportive, right? Like they're always like really good about it. My brother and I used to, like, we grew up watching wrestling. Like there was no big issues with wrestling, you know what I mean? Like we were all pretty set on like, no, this is fun, this is what it's about, this is what it is. So like my mom and family and all that, they understood like straight away like what wrestling is and how much we enjoyed it. When I told them the money and the time and the travel and stuff that goes into it, at first I think everyone's a bit like, whoa, that's a lot of money to be spending on traveling all that way. And I don't get me wrong, this year I've been super withdrawn on like where I've been traveling. So like I basically took time off traveling for 5 to 6 months thereabouts, like maybe like half a year. Like I haven't traveled anywhere.
Okay.
Just because I wanted to focus on myself, my life, and my home promotion. Like just focus on purely building stuff there, building people there. Like I'm the head trainer at QWA, so like making sure that like the guys were ready to go. So back before that, I was traveling like 3 out of 4 weeks every month, and spending dollars, like spending money on going to these places. And like, sure, like a lot of them would give you like a match fee or something, but when you're spending $300 on a flight, a $50 match fee is,
what's that?
you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really help recoup the costs or anything like that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely, yeah, it's everyone sort of is taken aback a little bit at first, and they're a little bit like, whoa, that's a lot of money to spend. But then I think afterwards everyone was just really supportive, and they're just kind of like, well, if that's what you want to spend your money on. Some people spend money on shoes, and some people spend money on clothes, and some people spend money on whatever it happens to be. I was just somebody who spent money on wrestling, and that was what it is.
Oh yeah, good on you. And I'm glad you have a supportive group around you. That's awesome. That makes a huge difference. That helps a lot. That's good.
Definitely.
We're talking about all these miles and everything. I might as well get this one out of the way while we're on the subject. Easy segue here. Do you got me a crazy road story?
Do I have you a crazy road story?
Anything from your travels? We got it. We got to have something. The fans love it.
Oh God. A crazy road story. You put me on the spot here because like we used to do this this Rockhampton drive. We used to do all the time. You know what I mean? Like we used to do this like every month all the time, right? So like it's the stories that used to come out of it. Okay. I can tell you about probably like the scariest trip we had where like we never used to do the 4 hours, stay the night, 4 hours, right? Like we never used to do that. We used to do the 8 hours full in one whack.
Wow.
And then, so on the Friday we do it all in one whack, and we'd get there at like 2 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and then we'd stay the night. We'd sleep into like 11, and like that's how we'd start our day, right?
Bless you.
I can tell you, one time, the reason we started doing the 4 was we'd left one day and we were super tired, and we were like, everyone had had a big working week, and we were like, look, let's just go. Let's just get our stuff going, and let's just get a move on. Let's get this 8 hours done. And we were like, yep, cool.
Uh-huh.
So we jumped on, grabbed all of our gear, and we started heading out. And then maybe within like the first 10 minutes, we were out there. We were driving along a straight road, and like most of Townsville, like not Townsville, most of like Queensland, when you're heading to places, is just a straight road. That's it. The Bruce Highway, one straight road.
Okay.
So we're heading out, just following the white line. That's it. Just follow the white line. That's what we're doing. We're talking, trying to make a little bit of light-hearted conversation, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, this dude pulls out in the middle of the highway, like no signal, nothing, just pulls out, doesn't see us. And so our driver at the minute, Sam, has to slam on the brakes as hard as humanly possible, right? So that this guy doesn't so we don't T-bone and kill this guy.
Right.
And so all of us are like, oh my God, freaking out as this car pulls out and whatever, and we're on the horn and, idiot and all this sort of stuff. And we were like, wow, that woke us up a little bit. And we were like, oh my God, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. So we avoided one idiot. And then we go maybe like 20 minutes, maybe half an hour down the road again, and we're starting to head into like just bush territory. Like there's nothing around.
Okay.
And then the second guy, he rips past us, and he's got a trailer attached to it, and he's like hauling all this stuff. And he goes as quickly down the outside of this overtaking lane as possible, and then he cuts in front of us. And then out of nowhere, right, out of like Final Destination, right, except like not as harrowing, this screen door that he'd been carrying in the trailer just flips out of this trailer. And starts like careening in the air, like flying towards us. And it doesn't like sort of drop, or it doesn't go to the left or right. It just heads straight for the car. And it just flies out of this car and starts flying towards us. And then so Sam, again, because he hasn't changed over yet, is just like half veers to the side to make sure that like he doesn't like swerve or anything like that, because there's still cars around us. And this screen door like barely like whizzes past the outside of the car and like explodes as it hits the ground. And then like there's packing foam and like a box and everything like flying everywhere. And this has all happened within like 30 minutes of us like leaving Townsville. And we're like, oh my God, like this is wild. And we're both like, what is happening? Like all of us are like, what is happening right now? Because there's 4 of us in the car. There was me, my tag partner, my other trainer, like the other trainers, Sam and Brendan, who are like all really good mates of ours. So anyway, we're like, what is happening? Half an hour in, we cannot, like, we're freaking out. And then we get a little bit further down the road, and then sure enough, like as we get like once again down another straight, another turn off, another dude pulls out in front of us, as once again without looking, as quickly as possible, flies out and just like goes onto the road. And once again, we have to slam on the brakes a third time without like trying to hit this car. And at that point, and like, don't get me wrong, like a 4-hour drive from where we are, like, and it gets dark. It was getting dark like relatively early. I think it might have been winter time. So by the time all of this had happened, and we're all just on edge and panicking and whatever, and just like freaking out with what's going on in the state of this drive. It's like probably 7 p.m. So then we get into Mackay, and we're like, all right, we'll go through Mackay and we'll just go straight out to Rockhampton. Just keep pushing the 8 hours like we always do. And then as we get through Mackay, we hear that like there's been a massive crash. Someone's like, unfortunately, like God rest, someone's been killed. It's going to be a massive delay. And we all just went, you know what? This isn't worth it. This
Really?
8 hour drive, after all of the like close calls that we'd had on that one drive, this simply isn't worth it. Like, it's not worth putting ourselves through it because this person was probably pushing through. This person was probably tired. This person has probably, been run off the road by some idiot trying to make the gap. It's absolutely not worth it. So we just thought, you know what? I'll just call my mum because obviously she's in Mackay where I live or where I was from. I'm like, I'll just call my mum. We'll just stay with her. We'll pick the drive up in the morning. And everyone was like, all right. And so we just started doing that from that drive on because it was just absolutely not worth all of that.
Yeah.
All of that rubbish, and all of that sort of stuff. And we didn't want to be the ones, on the news being a headline because some idiot wanted to try and make a gap or because we fell asleep at the wheel or something like that. And I guess that's one of the things that people don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you put in all these hours, you don't just and this sounds cliche and a little bit wanky, but you don't just put in hours in in the ring where you risk your body, right? Like you risk everything.
Yeah.
When you do all of that travel, every time you get into a car, it's a risk, right? So that 8 hours, that massive drive that you're trying to do to and from, that's a lot of risk for not a lot of reward. Yeah, you get maybe 10 minutes in the ring,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you sell some shirts, or maybe you get to work with somebody you've never worked with before. But for the most part, it's just a lot of risk for not a lot of reward. So we started breaking that drive up because after and I'm not superstitious in any way, but after that went down and after all those little near misses stacked up, I think we all just said to ourselves, no, we're not doing that anymore. Let's just break it up into 2 4-hour drives. Yeah, we get there a little bit later and whatever, but it's better than turning up dead.
Yep. You brought up a damn good point. It's honestly, you said exactly what I was going to say when you was through with your story. A lot of folks know the risks in the ring, and you guys put your body on the line every night. But yeah, you're on the road, and the road's dangerous, and especially 8-hour drives. Something's bound to happen. So yeah, I'm glad we brought that up. I'm glad you told that story because that gives folks, the audience, a little bit more insight. It's not just hell. I've been to dangerous hotels and almost been mugged in elevators. There's dangers. You're away from home. You don't know the people. It's there's a lot of danger involved when it comes down to it, and there's a lot of good. You meet a lot of good people too. I'll put that out there as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, some of the best people I've ever met in were people from wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
100%. I wouldn't have the friends I have today. I wouldn't have half the network around me today if it wasn't for the people I met in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there are heaps of risks and stuff that come along with even just doing something as simple as traveling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I'm glad you told that story. You're talking about the good people you've met in wrestling. Let's put some people over. In your 6 years, who have you saw come a long way? Who's looked out for you? Give us some names, some stories, whatever you want to put out there.
All right, cool. Okay, well, I got to put the boys over, obviously. Got to put the boys over. So, honestly, man, before I forget, anybody, there has been so many people. And I could do a full hour, just on the people I know in wrestling, right? And how cool some of them are.
Yeah.
So I'll try and keep it relatively brief, but I'm gonna put a lot of people over here because
you do your
wrestling
thing,
for me, wrestling for me has been something that I never thought I'd get into. Yeah, I've been played sports since I was really young, soccer kid, rugby league, touch footy, all of it. I've played all of it, and I was just a sport kid.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandmother wanted me to be an actor, and I was well, I'm not that good at acting, right? I enjoyed it, but I didn't know if it was going to be my thing. And then fast forward, and I found out there was wrestling in Townsville, and getting into it and training and working on it. There have been so many people that have helped me get better at this crazy sport, this crazy art form.
Mm-hmm.
And two of the best people that I've ever come across in wrestling are are like two of my best mates, like Sam Cannon. So Sam Cannon, QWA, and Seth Tylers. They are phenomenal, like workers and people. So like when I first turned up, right, like Sam Cannon was the first person I ever saw wrestle in Townsville, because I went and saw a show before I'd ever seen or tried anything out. So I went and saw a show, and Sam Cannon was the opener. And I can't remember who he was wrestling at all because I was so focused on this dude. He would have been back then 120 kilos.
Okay.
Like maybe, right? 120 kilos, like not taller than me, and I'm 5'11", right? Like we're like roughly the same height. So he's like a big dude. And the way that he could move around this ring was unbelievable.
Right.
Like to me, like you think like athleticism of like Keith Lee and stuff like that, like those big guys that can move and that are athletic and that just have like a tank. Sam Cannon, like he was just a monster in this ring, and like the way he could flip around and move around, and like the ease with which he was doing half of this stuff. I'm like, this dude is carrying weight, and he's still moving around. Like, and to this day, he's got the prettiest moonsault I've ever seen.
Nice.
Like dead set. And he's heavier now. Like I want to say he's probably like 140 now, because he's like older, right? And he's still got the prettiest moonsault like I've ever seen. And on top of that, just understands wrestling, like understands he's a big boy, understands like the psychology and all that sort of stuff. So like Sam Cannon's the first one. Got to put him over. Seth Tyler's been wrestling for 10 years and been in our company, like is a bit of a legend in our company because he's been around since like the QCW days.
Oh, okay.
And been wrestling since he was like 19 as well. So like he's still younger than me. Younger than me by a ways. So he's like got all this experience and he's still like a young guy, and just another dude that like super reliable in the ring, super like super confident, super just safe and like easy to talk to, great to work with, and like if anything ever was to go wrong in a match, like which with him, like him and I, it did go wrong. Yeah, he is just super cool about it. Like he's such a nice, suave dude. So I have a lot of time for him as well. So, and he's once again, like he's another head trainer with me. So, yeah, Sam and Brendo, easily two of the best guys in wrestling and two of the best guys in Queensland wrestling. 100% go and give them a follow and go and look at some of their stuff because they're crazy. Then I mean you've got like my best friend Gabriel, who like recently retired. Like we had his retirement match at our previous June show. He gave it up. Like I obviously like couldn't put into words like how much having him on the journey with me meant to me. We'd been wrestling for 6 years together, and I didn't meet him through wrestling. We just started wrestling together because we thought it would be fun. And yeah, his journey's over now, but he is obviously like a fantastic friend of mine, and the memories we created as a tag team were fantastic. The booker, Ultra Love, Jet Steel, he books our shows. He and also wrestles on them as well as Ultra Hate now, which is really cool. It's a sick gimmick.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, like he's a really good friend of mine. He took over a role which is really, I don't know if you know much about like booking in pro wrestling, right?
Oh, it's something.
It's something, right? Like, and I couldn't do it. Like I physically like didn't have the chops to be able to do that sort of stuff and to create stuff where everyone was happy and to create that environment where everyone was given a role and knew where they were going. Like it was really difficult, but he has managed it. He's a fantastic booker, a really good friend. And yeah, just those four guys for me have been at the core of like everything that I've been over the last 6 years. So they deserve massive props. But if I could also just give a quick shout to a little bit of Brisbane wrestling, who have taken me on and us on as their regulars as well, because
yeah.
like I said before, it's a 2.5 hour flight. It's like a 16-hour drive from Townsville to Brisbane. But
Wow.
um, you'd think you'd be relatively isolated, and I guess in a way I kind of am. But at the very same time, there's a guy in Brisbane, a guy and girl in Brisbane who own their own wrestling school, Bobby Bishop and Lucille Brawl.
Okay.
Um, they have been, they're like single-handedly responsible for like changing the game in Queensland wrestling in terms of like making sure that rookies are trained and making sure that promotions are looking after their guys and making sure that Queensland wrestling is getting the exposure that it needs, because we've kind of been like the ugly stepchild of Australian professional wrestling like for a very long time.
Yeah.
Um, but Bobby Bishop and Lucille Brawl have done everything in their power to change that. They own 3 Count Academy. Um, they wrestle for a bunch of promotions up and down the East Coast. They are phenomenal in terms of like who they are as people, how they run their school. So I definitely recommend like checking out 3 Count Academy in Queensland if you can. I definitely recommend checking out Bobby Bishop, Lucille Brawl. I recommend looking at all of the guys that they train. Like there's so many of them that are just such high quality. I'll rattle some names off at you. James Yeager, Roberto Pacino, Tim Hayden, Mitch Ryder, Jack Tarr. Like there's so many of them that are so incredible. Little Mars as well. Like she's fantastic. There are just so many of them that are incredible. I know I'm missing guys and all that sort of stuff, but across my time in wrestling, yeah, that's just like a very small snippet of the people that I've met in Queensland wrestling that have just made my time like infinitely better and have made me infinitely better as a performer as well.
Hell yeah. Props to them. Props to all of them. That's good stuff. I appreciate that. We were putting
That's
over
all
the
right.
people, and you'd mentioned kind of being the ugly stepchild of Australian wrestling. And I was going to ask you, what can you tell me about your time in the business, how you've seen things evolve? What's gotten better? What's gotten worse? Just tell the folks how the scene looks as far as your home promotion, other promotions, what you see going on. What can you tell
Yeah,
folks
man,
about the
100%.
evolution?
Yeah, definitely. Look, Australian wrestling for a very long time has, it feels like or it felt like it had struggled to get sort of like a foothold into where it was in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, at some point, like some points it wanted to be one way, other points it wanted to be another way. Um, Now I think Australian wrestling is kind of like Australia, the country, right? Like it's a very multicultural, diverse melting pot of different styles and of wrestling,
Right
right?
on.
So
Yeah.
like you've got your strong styles, you've got your death matches, you've got your traditional styles, you've got all of these different bits of wrestling all being integrated in all these companies around the country. And so I think because of that, Australian wrestling in and of itself is going through, I want to say, like its most successful period of like producing talent.
Okay.
And I mean, you just have to look at the names that are in big, like in the top 2 companies in the world, or in the top 3 companies in the world, like AEW, WWE, Impact, all of those places,
Mm-hmm.
NWA. Like, have a look at those companies. Have a look at the Aussie names in there, and these guys are half of them have come from like Adelaide.
Okay.
Some of these guys have like come through Adelaide or come through Melbourne or come through like Sydney, PWA. Like
Mm-hmm.
these are homegrown talent that have been sent over to America and succeeded,
Right.
which is crazy, right? Like before this, um, I'm struggling to name like a handful of them that really made the waves in the way that like Grayson Waller and Rhea Ripley have made waves.
Well.
And that's not to say it didn't happen,
Yeah.
but that's to say that like you look at the way that these names are taking over now, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like absolutely crazy to see that like these guys 2 years ago, 3 years ago, were wrestling in Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and you could see him every month. You could see Grayson Waller every month, PWA. You
Right.
could see Rhea Ripley. I think it was I want to say Wrestle Rampage or Riot City. I'm not sure, one of those two. But yeah, like, you know, you could see her every month.
Uh-huh.
It's wild to me that like that's happening. So I think that Australian wrestling is going through like a massive boom period right now, which is so great.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of companies um, have to take credit for that. You know, I think like companies like PWA in Sydney have to take a lot of credit for that. Companies like MCW in Melbourne, companies like EPW over in Perth, who are just filled with the best people I've ever met.
Hell yeah.
Like Perth wrestling, I love it so much. Like I love everyone over there, and they've got massive names. Like Damian Slater competed against Tajiri in the Cruiserweight Classic.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute monster in the ring. Like such a nice guy, and they've still got talent like Davis Storm, the godfather of Australian wrestling, who's an absolutely phenomenal dude. They've got all these talented people training guys who are then legitimately going on to be like world beaters in the business, which is great.
Right.
So I think Australian wrestling in and of itself, yeah, like as I said before, is going through like a massive boom period. And I think that's nothing but positive. And it's all down to the hard work that people have had to put in to try and change the perception of wrestling in Australia. Because I don't really think it's always been able to have the platform that it should. But I think it's really gone a long way in the last couple of years. And those companies have to take a lot of credit for that. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same in America. Maybe you can let me know.
Okay.
But there's two very distinct styles of attitude that we
Okay.
have wrestling at the moment, and there's some of it, like both of them have their merit, right? Like both of them have their positives and their negatives. There's the positive new attitude where it's like all inclusive, and you know we've got to make sure that it's wrestling's a safe space for everybody, and we've got to make sure that everyone's accounted for and looked after, and you know we want to drive people into the business, not drive people away from the business. And so there's that new school way of thinking, right? Like where we get rid of all the toxicity and the animosity, and you know we approach it as professional wrestling as professionals.
Right on.
And then there's the old school mentality where it's rough and tumble, that rough and tumble brawl style, you know, respect the vets always and all that sort of stuff. And you know, we maybe turn a blind eye to some of that old school stuff and sort of let it exist over there. And as long as it doesn't affect with us indirectly, it doesn't, we sort of let it go. So I think you know what I'm talking about, right? Like
I
that old.
promise. It's exactly the same over here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think what's happened is that we've started to move away from the old school and into the new school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the old school are struggling with it,
Yep.
but the ones that want to make the transition are trying.
Right.
And that's where we're keeping a lot of that old school talent and those teachings there, because there's still a lot of good stuff from the old school. Like, you know, without them, like we don't exist.
Right.
Without all of that stuff that came before, like we don't exist at all. So it's nice to be able to keep what they've learned, but bring it into an era where wrestling can grow and become more than just, you know, carny backtown backyard of rubbish kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And like you said, both sides do have merit. Over here, we call it, they're referred to as the old guard. And you do have the guys, like you say, trying to make the transition. And then you have some total shitheads, and they're dropping left and right. They're dropping like flies. They can't handle it. So good. But we still got the ones that got a shitty attitude. It should be this way, should be that way. And again, I'm glad you said there is some merit to that. We still do need to stay grounded in what, you know, but let's change with the times as well.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And this is what I had a conversation like with a friend the other day when we were talking about like old school wrestlers and like the way that they The way that they were raised and the way that they were trained and the way that they were brought up. And like half of it's like not their fault, right? Like half of it is like they were made to do 2,000 squats every day, and they were beaten up and they were punched and they were thrown around, and they were, they had that stuff drilled into them. Like that's how you should be in wrestling, because like, and that's enough to make anyone bitter and twisted. With everybody. And then that makes you, like, if that's the way that you were raised, then that makes you want to raise other people that way, because like, well, you haven't got your chance to impart that knowledge on somebody yet. So like it creates this vicious cycle of toxic training or toxic backstage presence. I don't know, something like that. And I think one of the things that is happening is there's a perceived lack of respect from some of those older guys being given to them by some of the younger guys. Right? Like some of these guys go, oh, these young kids, they don't respect me. They don't respect us. I'm a veteran. They don't respect me. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, there is a little bit of that going around, 100%. But I think it's also important to remember that respect is always like, there is always an inherent level of respect that you get from being in this business.
Right on.
Like regardless, like there's always an inherent level of respect that you get. Like if you've been in this business for 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, I will give you an inherent amount of respect immediately. And that will never change. But that doesn't mean that respect can't be lost.
There you go.
And I think that's the bit that some people don't like. Is I will always inherently respect you if you're a veteran in this game, no doubt. But you can lose that respect. And you lose that respect by, not treating people the same way that you would like to be treated, or by insulting or beating people up in the ring, or, all that toxic old school stuff that they do to try and like get one over on the rookies, or all that sort of rubbish, right?
Right on. We
have to move away from that. And so, yeah, I'll respect you 100%. There's no doubt in my mind. Like if you put hours into this business, you get an inherent amount of respect from me, but you can lose that respect, and you can't be angry if like I stop respecting you. Yeah. Because I don't stop respecting people for no reason. I don't just one day wake up and go, F that guy.
Yep.
Like there's a reason behind it. And so either you need to be self-aware enough to recognize, all right, well, why are people not respecting me? Why is this happening to me? Like, do I need to change? Or are you going to be so stuck in your ways that you go, no, it's not me. It's the other people that are wrong. And I'm going to stick with who I am as a person because that's what I believe in, which is a completely valid response. But don't expect people to like you for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's I think one of the things that the old guard can struggle with. Not do, because like some of them are great. Like, you know what? I'd say that 80% of them are great.
Okay.
And they've just gone, yep, change with the times. Like any job, change with the times. This is what it is now. You can't say this anymore. You can't do this anymore. We can't do these spots anymore because, of ABC. Let's change with the times. Fine. 100% respect you. And if people are willing to change with the times, all power to you, bro. 100%. Go for it. Adjust. If you're not willing to change with the times, totally fine. That's your decision. But this is where the world's headed. This is where it's going. If you don't like it, feel free to stay how you are, but you're going to close some doors for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like when you was going through that, I was thinking about my time in the business and how you said, you get the respect out the gate because you've been here paving the way for me. So thank you. And then over time, there's been certain people I'm like, I still respect you, but you can kiss my ass. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There's that there comes that point where you're like, I respect what you've done in wrestling. I respect how long you've been in wrestling. I don't respect you as a human being.
Yeah.
And that once that happens, like it's very difficult to get it back. And unfortunately, like I have met those people where I go, I respect what you've done in the business 100%. I respect what you've done in wrestling, but I don't respect you as a person anymore.
Yeah.
And that is just the long and the short of it.
Yeah. Me, I'm a production guy. I'm a camera guy. I'm the editor. I'm the podcast guy. So I run into people that aren't shit just like me. They're not a wrestler. They're a production guy. But finally, they're over somebody. This guy looks up to me, and they big league me. You're a
Yeah.
production guy too, man. Like, come on. And they
Yeah.
treat me different because I'm not a wrestler. So it is.
Yeah,
what it is.
and that's crazy to me because like to me like the camera guy and the production guy and those people, they're the ones that like, okay, so without you guys, like without the production guys, without the camera guys, without the photographers and the videographers and the ring announcer, right? What are you? You're a sweaty dude in tights jumping around in front of 20 people.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
Uh-huh.
Like that's all you are. If you're not getting your stuff filmed, if you're not getting promo photos, if you're not getting people talking about your stuff or making match graphics or, you know, there's such a large part of how your wrestling faction or your wrestling company is viewed as a whole. Like, I don't know about you, man. Like, if I see a match graphic or a poster and it's rubbish,
Right.
straight away, I'm like, F that promotion. Screw that promotion. Like, pay your guys. Pay your guys to do a good job and you know, pick quality work.
Yeah.
And make sure that your stuff is good or at least passable. You know, you've got to have good production value. So to me, like, if people are going around like insulting a production guy or insulting a videographer or a camera guy, I'm like, they're the ones that are going to film you.
Yeah.
Like, they're the ones that are going to take your photo. Like, they're the ones that you're going to use their material to promote yourself.
Yep.
And you're going to go and insult that guy. All right, well, I can imagine that they're just going to take nothing but 50 photos of you with your underwear hanging out, looking like a donkey.
There you go.
Because there is absolutely no way that if that camera guy, if he doesn't respect you, he's not giving you his best photos. I can guarantee that.
Yep.
He's going to forward you 50 of your worst shots, and he's going to keep all the good ones and delete them.
Yep. And that's the thing. I ride the road with the boys. 99.9 of them treat me with the utmost respect. I love them like brothers. It's the other production guys that look down on me and just give me those looks and you know, oh man, don't even get me started on it. It's insane to me. But thank you. Yeah, I do think we're very necessary as far as look, real fast. I was watching an Indie Fed last night. And they had one camera running. If you only have one camera, that's fine. I've done it, one camera. Okay, obviously the person knew nothing about wrestling because the wrestler goes right down by the apron and they're blading, they're gigging, and they're just
bro.
They're recording it, and it took like the wrestler like 10 seconds to get some juice. So they're just recording them carving their head up, and it was on TV. I watched this shit on TV. It wasn't one of the big companies, but it was on.
That gets on TV?
In Ohio, it does.
Oh, bro.
It hurt me, man. Like, luckily,
that's one of the worst.
Go ahead.
No. Sorry. No, I'll let you.
I'm burying myself. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's just like one of those things where like you've got it. Like as a camera guy, like surely. I don't know how it works with you guys, right? But like our camera guy, like always walk around and just be like, "Hey, is there anything you want me to get in your match? Is there anything you want me to miss?"
Yeah, me.
You know
me
what I
too.
mean? Like, is there anything you want me to get? Oh, we're getting juice. All right, cool. I'll miss that.
Yep.
So like as soon as the spot comes with the juice, like the camera goes from there, and then even if it's one camera, right? That up there, it's lost for time. Like no one ever sees it here.
Put it on the crowd or something.
Put it anywhere.
Anywhere.
Doesn't matter. Put it on your own dick. Like, who cares, bro? Like, just put it wherever. Just don't put it on the guy.
Yes.
Like, ripping his face apart, right? So then, and like this brings me to another point. I could talk about this for ages, but like, as a new guy with a camera, This is half on the Fed as well, just FYI.
Yep.
Because if you're giving a camera to somebody who's never held a camera before, that's on you. B, if you're not giving them a half an hour, and like maybe they did, maybe the guy's an idiot, maybe he didn't know, maybe he wasn't watching, I don't know, whatever. But if you're giving a guy a camera and not giving him a crash course on this is what you look at, this is what you don't look at, this is when you transition to crowd shots, this is when you're going yada yada yada, that's also on you.
Yep.
Right? Because he's holding this camera, but you've got to remember this guy's probably just a fan.
Yep.
So
that.
he's looking at what he would look at as a fan.
There you go.
Because he's like, yeah, I know that guy's up on the top rope posturing. Yeah, sure, whatever. I'm more interested in what this guy's doing here. So he's just watching this wrestling match as a fan, but he's just got a camera in front of him. If you're willing to put your camera in the hands of that guy and not tell them what to miss or what to not look out for, that's on you.
Yep.
As a company, you did that to yourself. You can't blame him. He's just trying to do the best job he can and watch wrestling. So there's that. And then there's also, I don't know if someone... Because did you put a status up about that?
Yeah, last night. Yeah, it pissed me off.
I feel like I saw it
about wrestling, but it got me.
I felt like I saw it, and I was like, "That's so true." And then I don't know if it was somebody who responded to your comment about it, or whether it was something else, where it just happened to coincide. But someone said also, no one knows how to gig anymore.
Oh, okay.
Like no one knows how to like get juice properly, and no one knows how to do it without like drawing attention to themselves and like making sure that like, because like gigging's an art form, right? Like gigging is like, that's hard to do, especially if you're under the ring or like in a Falls Count Anywhere match and stuff. That's fine, you can kind of hide it, you can try to sort of disguise it in a way where the crowd can't see you,
right? But
like center of the ring, lights on you, everyone's looking, to try and like disguise that shit's really difficult. So I think like part of it's got to go down to the worker as well. Like how obviously was he sitting there just like ripping his forehead apart? You know, has he done the old like forearm across, or has he tried to disguise it in any way, like hidden underneath the turnbuckle? Like I think there's a real argument to be made for like we don't teach that stuff anymore. Because it's kind of like an antiquated practice, like getting juice or getting color or whatever is like an antiquated practice. Like no one really does it and no one really teaches it. It's kind of just one of those things that you inherently learn when you come up to somebody and are like, hey man, I was thinking about getting some color. How do I do it?
Okay.
And then you get the knowledge that's been passed on by like 8 different guys that each tell you like a different thing. So yeah, I would definitely say that there's probably a call to be made for like, no one really knows, well, not that no one knows, but like there's not a lot of people that would know how to get color properly anymore, I would argue.
Okay. Yeah, and I was told that myself last night in some private messages. I do have to give it to the talent. It was a female, actually, believe it or not, and she was right by that ring skirt. She was hidden well, but that camera was just right on her.
Okay, yeah, then it's on the camera guy. Like, that's unfortunate. I was like, if she did her absolute best, man, like, there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Yeah,
like
there's not a knock on her by any means.
Yeah, no, like there's absolutely nothing you can do. If she's well hidden and she's protecting the business and doing as much as she can, then it's just a shame that some guy's there with a camera just watching the whole time. Like, hey, what are you doing?
And it's a shame not only the camera person, because don't get it twisted. I'm not gonna knock anything wrestling wise because I'm not a trained wrestler. But when it comes to camera work, editing, hey, guess what? I know a thing or two there, so I can speak up. And
of course,
yeah, not just the camera guy, the guy that put this on TV. I swear to God, I was watching another one of their shows today, and they called DD Trash BB Trash, tagging with some guy pro. Obviously, they took like their Twitter handle and was like, well, that must be his name, Scotty G Pro, when it's actually Scotty G. Like, god damn.
No.
And this is on TV in Ohio.
Oh man, no. Like, okay, so like we don't get any of that, right? Like over here, to get like on television, is so hard.
Right.
You've got to pay for like subscriptions and have like proper like deals and stuff. Like to get on like Fight TV, where like a lot of the wrestling companies go through. I think I can probably name like 4 companies, maybe 5 that are televised, like legitimately like televised, like pay-per-view kind of stuff.
AWE coming soon to Fight.
Yeah, like exactly. Whereas us, like, no, we're YouTube, man. Like we're just YouTube quality. Like that's where we're at. And like a lot of companies are like that. Just you get your stuff online, that's how you get noticed. Eventually, like when you get to a certain level of production value or whatever, then you can start thinking about like that sort of stuff. But there's like maybe 4 or 5 companies total that are on TV. But if people are just letting that on TV over in Ohio, that's crazy.
And it's the same deal here too. It's not, independent wrestling on TV is unheard of. It's not, in Ohio, maybe a few places in Pennsylvania, a few places in Florida. But other than that, like you say, it's your streaming services, your Fight TV. That's where I first saw PWA was Fight TV. It's not easy over here either. This company just lucked out. And the thing is, like, I'm such a fan of the company because they do have some good workers, but the production's dog shit. It's hilarious. I mean, they even have pyro for entrances. Make it make sense.
Oh, bro, that's like one of our biggest things. Like when we sat down at the start of the year and we were like, all right, we want QWA to grow. We want it to be like, we have like goals that we want to achieve. Like what's the first thing and I learned this from the EPW guys over in Perth, right? They were like, what's the first thing we need to focus on? I learned this from them. I was like, we have to strive to become the best live product in the state.
Okay.
That's our goal. Like we should doesn't matter about like online or independent wrestling TV or Fight TV. Like let's not worry about any of that. Let's make sure that our live product is the best it can possibly be. So I'm talking like, let's make sure that the production value looks good. Let's make sure that we've got a venue and lights and entrance videos and trons and fog and pyro and like all that sort of stuff. Like let's make sure that when you turn up to a QWA show, you know that you are getting absolute top quality professional wrestling.
Hell yeah.
Right? Once you've got that sorted, you chuck a couple of camera guys in there and some commentators, and then away you go. Right? Like the transition to then TV stuff isn't that big of a leap.
Right.
But you've got to focus on your live product. And if your live product is rubbish, then no one's going to want to watch it. Like who's going to want to pay top dollar for something that they can find in like their backyard gymnasium or whatever? Do you know what I mean?
I dig it.
So I think that before you put your stuff on TV, you need to make sure that like everything is good to go, that you are like 100% the best you could possibly be. Then you jump to TV. So things like not doing your research on your workers, like not knowing their names, not knowing how to run that sort of camera production properly, that all counts. Even if you're not uploading it to IWTV or Fight TV or whatever, if you're uploading it to YouTube, that's practice.
Yeah.
You need to practice making sure that you get that stuff correct, because eventually you're going to be streaming it to a much wider audience.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm with you. I think that even if you've got good workers and a good company, you really need to have your production value set. Yeah. And you really need to make sure that your live product is good.
How would you feel as a worker watching that show and they say, here's Trent Malachi or whatever, just give, or Trent O'Day Pro.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man, I fuming.
Yeah.
Like, I just fuming. Like, there's been a couple of times where even like the simplest stuff, like where I'd be working a show and they'd get like, because I was the QWA United Heavyweight champion for a while.
Okay.
Right. So it's QWA United Heavyweight Champion, because we had 2 belts and we brought them together and we made the heavyweight championship. So QWA company United Heavyweight Champion. That's it. Trent O'Day. Done. I've had people mess up the pronunciation of that belt so many times in my entrance. Like we do the big championship entrance, and they'll go, and it's the QWA Heavyweight United Champion, and I'm like fuming, seething, because I'm like, bro, like you've had so much time to practice saying that out loud.
Yeah.
Or they'll just drop bits of the belt. They'll just go the QWA Heavyweight Champion, and I'm like, United, because we had two, but like
Yeah.
it's all about just like, for me, it's about like the respect and the way that you build the belt and the way that you like put the title over with prestige and stuff, right?
For
So
sure.
like even when they stuff up stuff like that, I get like irrationally like in my head, I'm like, come on, someone fix it. Like someone just try a little bit harder. So yeah, I couldn't imagine like being a worker watching that show because I would be very skeptical. And I don't know. I like my wrestling shows to be, they don't have to be amazing.
Right.
You know, not every show is going to be, Royal Rumble of the Garden or SummerSlam of the Garden or you know, that not every show is going to be that. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But at least take pride in your own work.
Yep. I get it.
And then if you don't take pride in your own work, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah. You couldn't have said it better myself. You're exactly right. And we went over an hour, my man. It's been a really good conversation. So that's why I said if we're running over, we're running over. That's the good thing about YouTube instead of television. I'm in control here, so whatever.
That's exactly right.
Hell yeah. But in the last, we'll say last 5-10 minutes here, any upcoming shows you want to plug, any merch plugs, socials, anything you want to put out there in the ether, the platform's all yours. Put it out there, my man.
Yeah, man, 100%. Well, first of all, thanks heaps for having me. Like, I love talking wrestling. I could talk this rubbish like all day.
We'll have you
Like,
back.
there's absolutely like, yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. Yeah, look, for anyone listening, like if they want to follow the Queensland Wrestling Alliance, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We don't use the Twitter too much, but it's like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and it's all just at QWA Wrestling. So if you want to go on there, give us a like, a follow. That'd be great. If I can plug my own socials, you can follow me at O'Day QWA, so ODAY QWA. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter as well, and you can have a look at some of my stuff, which is great. And then, yeah, a couple of shows we've got coming up. So Best for Business is our next QWA show. That is next Saturday, July 15th. We'll be uploading that on YouTube as soon as we can get the footage ready. So hopefully like a week after
Good
next
time
week.
frame.
So yeah, so hopefully we can get that stuff up as quickly as possible. If you'd like to catch up on our old shows, you can go to our YouTube. We're just releasing like our dominant stuff now, which is great because they've had some sick edits done to them. So you can have a look at our old dominant shows. Those matches are going up now. And yeah, just give everyone at Queensland Wrestling Alliance a follow. Like just go and have a look at some of their stuff. Like you'll really, really enjoy it. And everyone's going to benefit from getting eyes on all different sorts of product. Like in the way I think of it, like wrestling is one big business, right? Like there shouldn't be any of that animosity or any of that like cross town hate or any of that sort of stuff. Like if you like wrestling, you like wrestling, give everyone a follow, go and watch it, go and watch as much as you humanly possibly can, and you should have a good time. The final show I'd like to plug is the PWL Pro Wrestling League have a show coming up, and it is called Project Revolution, which I would highly recommend following along my socials for, because I will be on that show, and it is a very high production value, very high quality show. So I would love for everybody to follow along with that. But other than that, that's it. I think I've plugged enough.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm going to check that out. I'm on my way to PWL as well. PWL Saturday night, Beckley, West Virginia. Outside of Beckley, you know where it's at. It's at the Crossroads Mall. Come down and join us. It's going to be a fun one. Trent O'Day, what an enlightening conversation, man. Like, well spoken. We're happy to have you back. We'll pimp some shows, whatever, and talk about whatever you want to talk about. I look forward to having you back in the future if that's something you'd be interested in, sir.
Thanks, brother. Absolutely. Like I said, I'm sorry I didn't get to talk about more. Like I go on these massive rants about things, and I love talking about this sort of stuff. So thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm a big fan of the massive rants, and I think me and you's pretty like-minded when it comes to things. So it was a pleasure, believe me. And I'll ask you to hang on the line here with me, my man. To the listeners, you know how we do. Treat each other with kindness and respect. Go out there and live your dreams, damn it. You could be making plane rides across Australia or the U.S., wherever you live. Just do it. Just go out there and give it a shot for me. Like I say, come down to the Crossroads Mall. Check us out. If you're not in the area, go to RSW in Parma, Ohio. Stack card there as well. To the Australian listeners, sounds like you got some options your way, too. Go out and support independent wrestling today. We love you. Stay tuned for more. Coming soon.